What is up, guys? Teddy Cornwall here. Welcome to the Underdog Talk. And you know there's something about the underdog, but I mean, today we have the Call Out King on the podcast. A shirt that says, "Don't do steroids," I believe, and don't
Right.
do
But
steroids.
but definitely do them. Yeah.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Don't follow the shirt.
don't fall off the shirt. The Call Out King, the tatted legend. Boom, boom, boom. Kenny KO. What is up, big fella? How you doing today?
Not bad, bro. It's always a good time. Like I was telling you, nothing's off limits. I'm always down to have a little conversation, talk about the fitness industry in its whole and who the fake natties are, who the BSers are, get to the bottom of it. And I mean, whatever you want to cover.
Hell yeah! And before we even get into the fake natties, bro, you scared the fuck out of me on Instagram. I thought you blocked me, and it turns out your Instagram went down. I was like, oh man, did Kenny really block me? Jesus! But yeah, I'm sorry
Dude,
about.
the amount of DMs I got about that saying the same thing, because like people that have my personal number and everything, or would email me just saying, "Hey, like what did I do? Why'd you block me?" And I'm just like, no, it's been a real journey. Though, I'll tell you that much. It's just a bunch of scammers. Of course, Meta is just the worst with customer service. So, but yeah, so everyone thought I blocked them. No, account just was going down over and over.
Fucking Instagram and now recently you were at the 2023 Mr. Olympia. I mean, how was that?
I mean, it was good. Unfortunately, we didn't get Michael Hearn to admit to being not natural, but I think that's kind of going to be an inevitable thing until one day I actually show up with a drug test or something and do it on the spot, which, maybe a little fortune telling there for you of what's going to happen in the future. But it was crazy. No Brad Castleberry. Trying to think like who some other. No Sam Sulek. Of course, he's going viral in the fitness industry. I thought if he was going to show up, that would have been a long line and quite the hype there. But yeah, just your standard Olympia. I feel like the one in Vegas is usually like a little bit better.
Yeah, and obviously it's returning to Las Vegas in 2024, and that's going to be really exciting. Now, I have to ask, I don't know if you ever actually came out with it. Do you actually think Michael Hearn is natty? Like, I mean, is there any possibility that Michael Hearn is natural?
Oh yeah, no, I actually think he is natural.
Really?
No, 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 no.
I was gonna say because I
No,
mean,
no shot. I think he's just so invested into the lie that in his head, he's just gonna take it to the grave. I don't know if there really be any playing devil's advocate. I don't know if there'd be any beneficial advantage to him actually coming clean now at this point. I don't think it would offer him any more money or people would respect him anymore just because it's been going on his entire career for shit. Like, oh, sorry, I don't even know. I didn't check with you. Can I swear on here? Okay. But I think he's been training like 30 to 40 years or something crazy like that. Like he's getting up there in age. So a lie that's gone on that long, if he was to come clean now, I don't think they wouldn't also be too shocked. Obviously, a lot of people would just be like, yeah, we all kind of knew that. But it just wouldn't be any incentive for him to do it, if that makes sense.
yeah. And the thing about Mike, which makes me seem like he's not natty, is he's admitted to having low testosterone his whole life. I mean, wouldn't it be harder to grow muscle and stuff with being natural and stuff like that if he had low testosterone? That's to me where I feel like he just can't be natural.
Right. So the really interesting part too is, I mean, I'm sure you saw my video. So he's working with a TRT clinic.
Yeah.
Says that he was in all these drug tested events and whatnot, which I don't think he's ever been in any. I'm gonna be honest. Like he can't name one, but yet he says he's been in all these drug tested events. And then so yeah, working with a TRT clinic, says he has low testosterone levels while having a better physique than over 99% of the population in the world, like probably 99.99999, like top 0.00001% genetics, if that's the case. But and then also, yeah, being low testosterone. And then he says he's also going to reveal his blood work at some point. We'll see if he actually ever does that. But then the thing is, I feel like if it's under his control, he's going to structure it in a way where it looks favorable, I guess, in his case.
I mean, again, to play devil's advocate, if he does do, these tests, I mean, it is pretty impressive if he passes all these natural tests. And I mean, wouldn't it be kind of hard to get all that shit out of your system? But if there's no evidence of him actually doing natural tests, then it kind of goes against what he's saying, obviously. I mean, I wonder if there's actual like proof of him doing natural bodybuilding shows and taking the tests. I wonder if that's actually out
Yeah,
there.
so that's the thing, is because I brought up the example of Lance Armstrong, John Jones, just a bunch of different sports industries where people were supposed to be natural and then at some point got busted. So I was saying, inevitably, if you're doing a bunch of tests, someone might slip up, maybe they make a mistake, then they get busted, they get popped, they come up with some excuse for what it was or what the reasoning was. Oh, I took a pre-workout, I didn't know it had trenbolone in it or something. It's just like some crazy fabricated story. But then Mike's rebuttal is that he's been tested his entire career countless times, but I can't find a single one where he's ever been tested. So if Mike is watching this, he can go ahead and throw up whatever ones he got tested for and maybe the results for it, but I don't think they exist.
Well, actually, Mike was going to come on the podcast until you came on and he said no. So unfortunately, that one's out of the question.
Did that actually happen?
Well, he actually wanted to come on the podcast, but I would have to fly out to his home in California, I believe, and I just that wasn't going to happen. So to me, he just wasn't. He wasn't worth it. I didn't think he was.
I mean, to be honest, it could be a pretty big interview if you pressured him with some hard questions.
Yeah.
But the thing is, then of course you're in his territory, his home. I'm sure he probably would shut down. Like, you'd kind of have to structure it in a way where you could somehow get away with asking certain things and pushing the limits with him, because that's always the thing I've learned with Mike is you need to like push him, but you can't push him too far because then he shuts down. So it's like you want to get just a little bit of information out of him that you can, and then continue to like build on it. But yeah, he's an interesting one, man. It's kind of like the Liver King before Liver King got busted.
And I mean, if he is natural, which I don't think it's possible, then he is one of one on this earth and genetically just a freak of nature. But I just don't think there's any possibility. And speaking of Liver King, obviously he got busted for not being natural. And, who's a bigger not natty than Liver King and Michael Hearn out there that's still going around claiming to be natural, Kenny?
There's always gonna. I mean, of course, back in the day, there was Cali Muscle before he came clean about stuff. He was claiming natural for the longest time. There's always been these dudes in the fitness industry. Jeff Side. I don't know if he'd be a bigger name. I honestly feel like the biggest names are going to be the Michael Hearn one, just because he's been around in the industry for so long and he's done, of course, TV shows, a bunch of different stuff. So he's a more notable or recognized figure. Liver King, of course, with his virality, he became a big one that a lot of people had eyes on. And then this is another thing too, is I always say, regardless if Mike is natty or not, his genetics are still far surpassed majority of the population on the planet, even with the use of gear, because I know plenty of people, myself included, who have taken gear and will still never look anything remotely close to Mike O'Hearn. So it's like you have to have those genetics of where you're just actually receptive and able to soak up and utilize the gear you're taking, like a lot of the IFBB pros and people that are stepping on stage. And some people just don't have those genetics where they don't respond well. They're not a hyper responder. So, who knows what dosages Mike O'Hearn would be taking, what he's taking. I've heard things, of course, I can't really say much on the podcast without other people testifying behind it. But I've heard stories about Mike. We'll leave it at that.
We'll leave it at that. And now I do have to ask, do you think Dwayne Johnson is natural? I've heard there's reports that he hasn't come out of admitting he's on stuff yet.
I mean, definitely not natural. I think anyone who's going to be in Hollywood and the movie industry, the thing is, a lot of people think you're natural if you're prescribed it by a doctor. So one thing, or one common trend I've noticed too, is I'll interview a lot of people and they'll say they're on TRT, but they'll be on an exacerbated or just like a really high dose of TRT, almost like bodybuilder low cycle levels. And they think that's natural because it's prescribed by a doctor. Same thing. So like a doctor could be prescribing growth hormone or peptides and all these things. And they think because it's prescribed by a doctor, they can still claim the natural status. So what happens is a lot of the movie actors, Mark Wahlberg, The Rock, Hugh Jackman, all these dudes are going to be on cycle, Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth for Thor. These dudes are all going to be on stuff. It's just, of course, they're not going to be able to talk about it because they're such a big public figure that the movie industry in Hollywood is never going to allow them to talk about that stuff. But for them to actually like get into the shape that they need for the roles and as fast as they do it, of course they're going to have assistance from doctors and their trainers and everyone getting them what they need to so that they can fulfill the look of the role. I mean, it only makes sense.
Damn. So you're saying Chris Evans in Captain America was not natural? That
When it
one's
came out of the hyperbolic time chamber.
that one's a killer. Now, do you think the fitness industry, Kenny, is being hurt by fake natties? And I mean, do you think it's better to be open about what you're using, or not to be open about it, and why?
Dude, so this is the interesting dilemma here. Is it's a double-edged sword, right? Because back in the day when there was more the fake natty thing and people weren't talking about as openly about what their cycles are and whatnot. You've probably noticed when you go on TikTok, it's everyone talking about trend and what their
Mhm.
cycles are now. So you have the side of it where it's transparent, and then you still have the fake natties. But the thing is, there's so many people talking about what they're taking now that a lot of people aren't going to have the best information, and you'll have your teenagers, 15, 16, who are just stepping foot in the gym wanting to immediately hop on trend or all these crazy compounds because they see their favorite influencer talking about that's what their cycle is, so they want to replicate because they want physique like them. So versus back in the day when no one was talking about it, the kids didn't really know where to get it or what to take or what to do, and then now they know what to do or what the other people are taking. So it's going to be horrible either way, to be honest, because it's like you don't want people to lie about it, but you also don't want to promote people that shouldn't be taking it, that they're doing all these crazy cycles, if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. I think it is a double-edged sword. I think if you're going to be open about it, maybe be open about it. Don't go into detail necessarily. Just admit you're not natural. I think that might be kind of the best of both worlds to not give the kids, the idea of what to take per se. I don't know if that's how accurate that would be. But speaking of the fitness industry, you obviously see it going in kind of the right way. And what do you think about this new guy, Sam Sulek, who's obviously been taking over TikTok, taking over Instagram? What do you think about him?
I mean, I'm a fan of him. I don't watch his content regularly just because I know he makes longer form videos. I just see all the little clips and stuff posted on the different social media platforms. And I could be wrong on the statement, but I don't think he talks about what he takes. He just says that he's not natural, which everyone's going to know anyway, just based on looking at his physique. So I think he actually brings a really nice, genuine type of content to the industry where everyone was doing this more structured kind of Photoshop, hiding a lot of stuff. I feel like with him, you get a more transparent, just humble guy showcasing what he does, but he's also not promoting drug use like a lot of the other influencers that are talking about, like how they're hopping on trend, they're upping the dosage to achieve this look and they're adding in this compound. So he just kind of keeps it as the basic, like we were just talking about, not natural. So
Yeah.
people are aware, but he's not really giving, especially because he has a young audience, the information to where they're going to be damaging themselves.
Yeah, and I kind of like that on what he's doing, at least being open about it and not lying about it. Obviously, he's not. You can tell he's just not natural, but being transparent enough, I think, is kind of that middle ground where it's not a double-edged sword. Being transparent enough, and speaking of transparent, I saw Stacks came up to you at the Mr. Olympia. What was that about?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm sure some people maybe watching this would remember when he had his beef with Big Boy.
Yep.
I know he calls him Big Girl or
Yeah,
whatever
big
name
call.
he uses, but yeah, so they had beef, and I remember I made a reaction video talking about when Stacks pulled the knife on Big Boy. I don't even remember my exact comment, but I think I said something like, I don't think Stacks would have actually done anything or stabbed him. But I wasn't saying it in the way of disrespect that I don't think Stacks would stand up for himself. I was saying I don't think he would jeopardize what he's built
No, yeah,
over like this little altercation. So it was basically just a misunderstanding, and Stacks, being the dude he is, just of course like
yeah.
came up to me while I was interviewing someone at Olympia, and then that was where that footage ensued. But yeah, we squashed it pretty quick too, because he understood that it was just me talking about how he once sacrificed what he's built.
He's a great guy. He was on the podcast. He was on the podcast like 2 days after that beef with Big Boy. So it really helped the channel, obviously, because he was a big news in the fitness industry. That whole thing with Big Boy. Now,
Yeah, and I remember a lot of people were talking about that.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was pretty intense, and Big Boy's kind of just died down, and I don't know what's happened to him.
I actually saw recently because I know him. I wouldn't say I'm close with Big Boy, but I've filmed a couple videos with him, and I talk to him from time to time, very rarely. But I know he got rhabdo, I believe. So he was in the hospital
Wow.
for, yeah, somehow he got it. I don't know, some type of infection. Maybe it was bad gear or something. But yeah, apparently that's what he got. So That's the the update on Big Boy.
Oh, hopefully he comes back stronger, and obviously, thoughts with him. You never want to hear that. Now, speaking of the Olympia, did you actually get to watch any of the actual events, Kenny?
So it's always kind of a night, especially I don't know, the Olympia out in Orlando, which is where it was this year instead of Vegas, where it normally is. I just feel like it wasn't as well done. There was just a lot more mayhem, not as well structured. And then the finals are usually pretty crazy. And to be honest, you're going to see everything on social media almost instantaneous these days anyway. So I'm like, I'd rather just avoid the mayhem, especially after I've been filming all day and whatnot at the expos for both days and talking to everyone and usually losing my voice by the end of each day. And then I'm just drained. So I just want to like go eat some food and pass out. And then we actually went to the BKFC, which is the bare knuckle boxing. So we went and did that, spectated that event. But yeah, like I said, I mean, you usually just see the results instantaneous. So I'm just kind of like keeping updates on social media as the night goes on.
Yeah, shout out that. Well, obviously, Underdog Talk will be having David Feldman on, who's the president of BKFC. So that's going to be a good podcast when he hops on. And BKFC is getting wild with it, and they're really taking over. And
those dudes are crazy, bro.
They are. I mean,
they actually when they were first starting out, they wanted me to come on. This is like when the influencer boxing first kind of started. They wanted me to find an opponent to do bare knuckle, and I was down. The thing was, I couldn't find anyone who would be down. Not only to box, like of course, boxing is one thing. Like a lot of people won't even step in the ring, but most people, if they're sane, they're not going to want to do bare knuckle just because that's like a whole nother level of insanity. So, yeah, it never came to fruition, but maybe one day we'll see.
Maybe one day you should have hit Brad Castleberry, see if he was.
Oh, I tried. I offered him. This is before bare knuckle. I offered him like $100,000 just to show up and box. Yeah. Like six, I think it was six figures. I could be, maybe it was 50,000, but it was definitely, it was a pretty astronomical number just to show up. So that wouldn't be including like all the revenue streams that would be coming in from sponsors and all that and all the payouts. That was just literally to show up and box. That was it.
Speaking of kind of dying out, what happened to Bradley Castleberry? Like I haven't heard anything of him since your videos, honestly. It's almost like after your videos, he just went, into space. What happened to him?
Yeah. So, I was looking for him at Olympia. I just don't think he went to Olympia this year because I'm still blocked by him, so of course. And then I hardly keep any tabs on him anymore, just because. Not to be that guy, it's just it comes with the nature of social media. I think he became irrelevant. No one really talks about him. He's not doing anything. He's not doing the fake weight, at least as far as I'm aware, like the fake weight stunts anymore that were kind of getting him that virality and getting him talked about in the industry because there was a lot of people who were believing he was doing these world record breaking lifts and everything before we all figured out his fake weights. So I know LA Fit Expo is coming up, and that's more in his neck of the woods. So it would be nice to do a reunion because I haven't seen him since I believe 2019 Olympia. So it's been a long time. Yeah. So it would be really interesting to do a little recap or a little catch up with good old Brad.
Oh man, that would blow the internet. Now let me ask you this because this is something that I really you impress me on. You're really able to handle, I don't want to say the haters, but kind of negative comments, people who don't like what you do, obviously in your field, calling out people who are fake natties, and the people you're calling out obviously don't like it. How do you kind of handle and deal with their criticism and not let it affect you? Because that shit would just fuel me. I feel like I would get so butthurt or offended by what other people would think about me.
Yeah, so I mean, that's just always how I've been too. Of course, when I started on YouTube and social media, I feel like you're a lot more sensitive to what people say as you're starting out. And then you just start to grow thicker and thicker skin because you almost become like desensitized to people chirping back type of thing. But I've always been a firm believer in just being like transparent, truthful, no matter what it is. Like I'm honest about all of my fuck ups in my life. If anyone was to ask me, like I'm a super open book, and I just think that's the best way to be because you're never gonna have to worry about lying or deceiving people, scamming people, anything like that, right? And then, so what a lot of people don't understand, or the ones that usually have some type of problem with the natty or not, is they think, which I understand because of the way it's edited, is they think I'm just approaching people in the gym and shoving a camera in their face and just being like, yo, are you natural or not? Or like, what's your cycle? But what they don't see is beforehand, before like even recording or just before the actual edited video, is I'm like, hey, do you want to be on a YouTube video Someone will ask like what the topic is going to be. Sometimes I'll tell them, or sometimes I'll be like, it's just going to be like a little bit of a surprise. And then after the filming, I'm always like, yo, are you cool if we post that on YouTube? So it's kind of like a double whammy where I'm getting their approval beforehand, and I'm also getting their approval after filming to make sure they're cool with me posting it. And then also a lot of the people actually want to be on camera. Like a lot of people don't realize I'll have people approach me like, yo, can you do a natty or not on me? And then we'll structure it where I'm like, hey, are you, as if I just approached them, right? Just because it makes it more interesting to jump right into it rather than doing all that little BS talk beforehand. So I get why people think it, but if they actually looked at how it's played out, they would have a totally different like understanding of it. So that's why it doesn't really get to me. And then also just being transparent. I just think people should be truthful. It's really what it boils down to.
Yeah, 100%. So Mike's fine with you just posting all this stuff. He knows what you're going to ask him then, right?
I mean, at this point, yeah. I kind of honestly miss the days though in 2017 when I started doing YouTube, when I could go to Olympia and approach Brad or approach Simeon Panda, Jeff Side, all these dudes, and they didn't know who I was, right? So I'd catch them off guard because they think I was just a fan coming up with a camera, like wanting a picture or wanting to ask them some generic fitness question or something. And then, but now it's like they'll see me coming and they instantly know. Mike sees me from like across the expo and knows instantly what I'm going to ask him or what we're going to try and talk about. And he knows I'm going to push his buttons. And he kind of has to play along with it. Otherwise, he's going to be that kind of salty guy on camera. So it's definitely a different game now. What I think I would want to start doing is either wearing like a disguise or maybe having other people ask the question for me or something. Just because I think it's more genuine when you get that initial reaction to hearing it. You can tell so much about how they actually are just by the expression on their face when they hear the question. So like when they see me, they can kind of like prepare in their head what they're going to say beforehand and structure it how they want or how they think it's going to play out, versus if you're just completely caught off guard, you'll see on their face instantly. Like if you look back at my old videos and I'd ask people, you can just see like it clicks like, oh shit, like how do I answer this? So yeah, kind of miss those days. We'll see if I can somehow maybe bring that back.
You know what I thought was one of your really funny ones at the Mr. Olympia? I don't know if I should be saying this because we actually are going to be having her as a guest, is when you asked Sarah, who was, I think, the Miss Olympia, maybe I forget what class she was, if she was natural. I don't know why.
She was the one with I don't know if it was her husband or coach or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Where
That
she just like didn't answer it.
Funny.
Yeah.
She answered
I
it.
mean, we all know the answer. Yeah. But yeah, it's just funny when people, which I get if you sign a contract, right? Like, but I also, on the other flip side of the coin is, I don't ever expect anyone to talk about what they take. I've even said it in numerous like interviews that you can watch where I'm like, you can talk about your cycle, or you can leave it as natural, not natural. It's up to you. Yeah. But yeah, if they just leave it as like, no, I'm not natural, you're not really condemning yourself or breaking any form of contract. You're just saying what everyone knows. Now, if you were to go out and be like, yeah, I'm on, 400 milligrams of tren, I'm on 600 milligrams of test a week, blah, 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 talking about clen and all these different things. I totally understand how, your sponsors and especially the IFBB and everything wouldn't be cool with someone talking about that. I get it. But there's definitely not going to be any issues with someone being like, no, I'm not natural.
Yeah. And my thing is, has Sebum come out as he's natural? Obviously, we know he's not, but Sebum's been kind of avoiding that topic too. I mean,
I think I saw a clip recently. I think it was actually a couple of days ago. He was in some press conference talking about how he's obviously not natural, but he takes less than what people think, because as time has gone on, he's gotten smarter with his training and his nutrition, where he doesn't need as much. Now, I don't necessarily fully believe that. I think inherently as the divisions grow, I mean, you've probably seen over the last couple of years how these guys develop, not only in the open division, but classic physique, men's physique, especially. I think they're going to start implementing a weight cap on that just because it's literally just classic bodybuilders in board shorts now at this point. And the divisions, even bikini, the women's divisions and everything have grown so much that inherently, what does that result in is obviously people are going to need to take more gear to match that level of competition. It's just what it boils down to. So I don't think Chris Bumstead is being fully transparent with it, but I don't think he's ever going to talk about exactly what he takes or what dosages, just because, yeah, like we said, like his business mindset and everything, and, influencing the young audiences of what, they think they should be taking.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I like how and men's physique is becoming scary with it. They're looking and we had Ryan Terry on, who actually won the men's physique, and he was just talking about how each year it seems like those guys are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and their legs are even looking a little bit bigger and bigger. But I think some of them could do classic, which is scary to me, honestly, because you never thought men's physique would be able to kind of win or even participate in classic, and now they're just getting bigger and bigger, and obviously we're getting the mass is just becoming insane that we're seeing in the open. And
Yeah, and the wild thing too is if you look at whether this is bikini too, if you look at the first year that the bikini division was brought in versus what it is now, and then the crazy one is if you look at the first year men's physique Olympia versus what it is now, when I think Mark Anthony was the first men's physique Olympian
think he was.
back in the day. And if you look at like his physique and then Sadiq back then, Jeremy Buendia, I'm trying to remember some of the other names. Ryan Terry, I think, was even competing back then. But if you look at all their physiques back then versus how these dudes look on stage now with Brandon Hendrickson and all these guys, it's just such a night and day difference that I'm actually astonished that they let the division kind of transform that much to the level it's at.
I am too, Kenny. I think it's quite interesting how they let that progress, and hopefully it goes in the right direction, and hopefully it, I don't know, men's physique is men's physique to me. I think it's the classic board shorts, classic aesthetic thing, but it's become mass monsters in that division, which is kind of insane. Now, I do always like to end this podcast with the two Underdog Talk staple questions, and the first one to you is, what is your biggest tip for someone who's looking to start their fitness journey, after all you've seen, all you've learned in the fitness industry so far?
Oh man, there's so much. Just because I have people that reach out to me with these questions all the time, like asking about all of these teenagers that reach out asking about what cycles they should take and all this stuff. And it's just crazy to me. So I guess the number one takeaway or advice I'd give to someone that's just getting in the industry or maybe wants to maybe be in this industry or something, or just maybe even get into fitness is just acquire as much knowledge as you can before you do anything, right? Like, of course, go in the gym, train, be healthy, exercise, try and eat healthy, try and figure out a diet that works for you. Another thing is also everyone's going to be different. Everyone's genetics are different. So a keto diet might work for someone, might not work for someone else. Maybe you respond better to carb cycling, certain macro counts, maybe intermittent fasting. So there's so much trial and error because what might work for one person might not work for you. And what works for you might not work for someone else next to you. And regardless if we're talking about steroids, if we're talking about diet, if we're talking about training styles, there's so many different things that you just have to adapt to. And it's just a real trial and error process. So doing as much research as you can before you dabble into anything or try anything, if we're talking recreational type stuff. So you actually have the knowledge beforehand of the potential side effects, what could go wrong, what to look out for, just so you're really taking your health into consideration. Of course, doing like blood work and everything, getting your internal health markers, your liver enzymes, how your heart's doing, your actual testosterone to estrogen levels with your thyroid. So do like a full blood panel early on too, especially as a natural lifter. That way you have that baseline of where you were at when you started. So then let's say if you take some cycles and whatnot, and maybe you want to come off at some point, you can see how close you can get those levels back to when you started, or like how maybe severely you kind of fucked yourself up compared to where you started. So I guess, yeah, just really the biggest takeaway is do your research, actually take time. Don't just immediately kind of everyone wants everything instantaneous these days, and they want to get everything, whether it's followers or muscle, whatever it is, instant. And unfortunately, the fitness industry just isn't one of those things. And I mean, that could be a testament to a lot of the people that are on stage and whatnot. It takes time, but just do the research. It'll pay off in the long run.
100%. Always ask for advice if you don't know it. I think that's also to add on to that. Now, second question, what has been your biggest underdog moment in your life so far, where everything was against you, where you felt like you were doubted, where just, you were the underdog?
So actually, I talked about this story recently on my Instagram, but what a lot of people don't know is I had no money to my name. I was shoplifting groceries. I could hardly pay my rent. I was renting like a single bedroom. And in my Instagram story, I was showing this little tiny TV that I've had since. And it was kind of like a reminder to me that I kept in my master bedroom for a long time frame, just because every day when I'd wake up, I'd see that little tiny TV and it would remind me of like where it all kind of started, where I had no money to my name. And I was basically forced with the decision to just work my ass off as much as I could to get out of the situation I was in. So a lot of people think that I was just kind of like handed all these different things and I came from a rich family and all this stuff, which is not the case at all. I actually had no money. I was shoplifting a bunch of shit back in the day because I couldn't even like get I couldn't afford all my groceries, like chocolate covered almonds and all that shit. No shot I could afford anything that was going to be like a higher priced food item in the grocery store. Versus like now, of course, I've come a long way and own multiple businesses and whatnot. But yeah, just if you really focus and you actually see yourself and envision yourself doing something, you can definitely do it. I mean, of course, everyone's gonna have those motivational talks and whatnot, but I really am a testament to that because I had nothing.
Yeah, and that is what they say, something about the underdog. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, the absolute call out king, Kenny KO. Now, Kenny, before we go, the floor is yours. What are you working on? Where can we find that Instagram, the YouTube? I know you're an enhanced lab athlete. Shout out to Connor and obviously that whole team. But where can we find all your content, sir?
Yeah, so Kenny KO on YouTube. I'm sure you can search it, find me there. Kenny KO, I think with 4 O's on Facebook and Instagram. And I think the same also on TikTok. So, but TikTok and all those ones are just going to be the same short form videos. Of course, I have Half Wicked, which is my brand. So if anyone needs anything, of course, we'll be adding some like peptides to the list too, BPC and TB500. So those will be added very soon. Let's see what else. Of course, enhanced labs. Just if anyone ever has questions, shoot me a DM. Of course, I can't answer every single DM, but I try and answer as many as I can and get back to people as much as I possibly can just to give back. So
hell yeah. And what's that enhanced labs code, Kenny?
Oh, just Kenny KO. Yeah, if you guys wanted like any traditional supplements, pre-workout, anything like that, then yeah.
And first person to use code Kenny KO, send me a DM. Let me buy one, get one free on Enhanced Labs because they are absolutely awesome. Love what they're doing over there. Some top quality products as well. And, really love the team over there. And, Kenny, thank you again for taking the time to come on the podcast, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on this video. Until next time, guys, the Call Out King and the Underdog out.